Hi everyone, my name is Austin. I know what you're thinking. Oh good lord, he's late again. What happened? Did he get sick or something? No, it's just this one took a little longer than I had intended. This was supposed to be for January, but now it's February, so happy Valentine's Day, I guess. But this is probably past Valentine's Day, so yeah. Anyway, so let's start off 2024 with a bang, ladies and gentlemen. So, today, I'm going to review Ed, Edd, and Eddy. That's right, I'm going to be covering the entire series. And even though this set here is not the whole series, it doesn't come with the specials or even the movie, it still is mostly complete, and the fact that this even exists and I'm holding my hand, that's an achievement to behold. I've been clamoring for this for years, and I'm glad I have it. May not be everything I wanted it to be, but hey, I got it. So without further ado, let's talk about it. The plot for the show is pretty much like this. Long ago, in a faraway land, there was a man known as the Avatar, who was a master of fire, air, water, and earth, who was frozen many years ago, and
All right, cut! Wrong!
sorry, wrong show. 7 young kids at summer camp end up in a place called the digital world, and
Calculating.
sorry, let me try again. Up, up, down, down, left, right, B-A. Wait, that's just a cheat code.
I'm sorry, your time's run out.
Give me a second while I attempt to find the plot.
Nope. Oop, that ain't it. Aha!
The main focus of the show is on these 3 characters, all of whom share the name Edward and go by different variations of said name. These guys are Ed, the stupid yet good-natured and inhumanly strong dog's body of the group, Ed, usually referred to as Double D, the intelligent, creative, Felix Unger-esque member of the crew, and Eddy, the self-appointed leader of the pack, who is short-fused, greedy, and a con artist who could probably run for Congress and pretend he's giving all the money to charity, when in reality he's been sitting in an account gathering dust, and most other donations are going toward Botox and other things. Together, they form the Eds, and their goal is simple: scam as many kids within their cul-de-sac, and take the money to go buy some gobstoppers, or as we call them, jawbreakers. These plans often backfire though, usually resulting in embarrassing failures and humiliation overall, with the Eds pretty much being considered outcasts by pretty much everyone, as they're hardly ever invited to any of their other activities. And that's pretty much the setup for everything that happens in the show. Simple yet interesting concepts that lead to uproarious results. Overall, it works. Right, Jeremy? Tubular boobular, man. Tubular boobular. Glad to hear it. Now let's get to the production. The creation of Ed, Edd, and Eddy really began with one man. A man with a vision. A man of talent. A man from Canada. A man of Italian descent. And a man who's not John Cristofalusi. That man was Danny Antonucci, and it all started with him and a dare. But before he made art, he started doing other things, including some work with Hanna-Barbera on shows like The Richie Rich Scooby-Doo Show, The Flintstone Comedy Show, and The Smurfs.
Hey, boys and girls, it's Papa Smurf.
As well as movies like Heavy Metal and The Chipmunk Adventure. Antonucci soon gained some buzz when he created his animated short, Lupo the Butcher, from 1987, and soon after created his own studio, aka Cartoon, in 1994, where he created his animated series, The Brothers Grunt, for MTV, which is French for he started out in more adult-oriented animated media compared to the shows he assisted Hanna-Barbera with, or what he would later conceive. The Brothers Grunt was not a success, however, and was quickly canceled after receiving terrible reviews. Although Antonucci has said that he doesn't regret making the show, and views it as more of something that he did and moved on from it, and enjoyed his time making the show. With this in mind, Antonucci decided on a dare that he would make a children's cartoon of his own, and soon had an idea while doing a commercial, coming up with 3 characters that he was ultimately pleased with, and his excitement over their potential gave them the names of Ed, and Eddy, developing a show around in the following months. In 1996, he faxed a 1-page concept sheet and pitched the series to Nickelodeon, who, probably because of the scenario with you-know-who, refused to give Antonucci creative control and thus took his business elsewhere, eventually pitching it to Cartoon Network, who agreed to let him have creative control of the show, and so they continued course with each other. Eventually, Mike Lotso, the then Vice President of Programming and Production for Cartoon Network from 1994 to 2019, showed immense interest in the show, and asked for a show Bible which arrived via fax machine over the next few months, usually a few pages at a time, and soon after an affirmative response from Cartoon Network founder and first president Betty Cohen, the legal paperwork and deal making was a go, along with a startup meeting in Los Angeles at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, which has had celebrity guests like the late Anthony Bourdain, Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, author F. Scott Fitzgerald, Red Hot Chili Peppers lead singer Anthony Kiedis, Courtney Love, and Hunter S. Thompson, was a center stage for the wedding of former Duran Duran guitarist Andy Taylor and the band's hairdresser Tracy Wilson in 1982, and has appeared in films like La La Land, the 2018 version of A Star is Born, The Night Walker, Bloom in Love, The Doors, and Maps to the Stars. At that meeting, it was decided Antonucci's studio, aka Cartoon, would make this show a thing, and Ed, and Eddy would soon become the first Cartoon Network original series to be made through an outside company instead of through Hanna-Barbera, which made most of Cartoon Network's previous hit shows before being absorbed into Warner Bros. Animation and closed its doors on March 12, 2001. The series also became AKA's first show to bypass the necessity of a 7-minute short and go straight to series. When it came to inspiration for the characters, Antonucci based the characters on people he knew in his life, with the Eds having been inspired after his own traits and the activities of his own sons, while the Cul-de-sac Kids and Canker Sisters were based off of those he grew up with. For Rolf, the son of a shepherd, inspiration came from Antonucci and his cousins, since he was of Italian descent and grew up in a household that was a first-generation foreign household that, when compared to those born in Canada, had different traditions and ideas of how to live. He even once said, although I probably can't confirm this, so take this with a grain of salt, "Rolf is me and all of my cousins. My parents were right off the boat when I grew up playing to 2 different worlds, the modern world and the 1950s Italian world. My parents lived like Rolf's did, still live in the past, with strong traditions and strange cooking and having a hard time assimilating to modern life." As for other characters, Jimmy was based off of one of his cousins, who usually spent more time with the opposite sex and was described as being more feminine, while Johnny and Plank were inspired by a good childhood friend of old Danny Boy, who he said was a loner and spent a lot of his time carrying a blanket, which also proves that Johnny is essentially the Linus of the series, with Plank taking the place of Linus's blanket. Antonucci has made it clear that Plank, who was simply just a piece of wood, and I don't mean what Johnny's got downstairs, was a part of the show, believing it would be amazing with Plank being a character of his own, and would make Johnny more of a risk taker. This includes running his widow.
Okay, that's a little disturbing.
Wow!
Okay, it was just a little dark humor. I mean, it's nothing wrong.
Wow!
Okay, let's just move on.
You sicken me.
Okay, that's the last one, I promise. There were those who wanted to make Plank blink, smile, talk, dance, fart, smash a watermelon, and slice and dice and make julienne fries as if he were real, but Antonucci said no, stating that it was just a wooden plank and nothing more, and that Johnny's imagination is filling in the blanks for us, which is perfectly understandable. Just ask Wilson. He helped Chuck stay sane while on a deserted island. Now then, let's talk about the voice talent. For the voice cast, the following people were cast as the Eds, with Matt Hill, who voiced the titular Kevin Keane in Captain and the Game Master, Kira Yamato in the Ocean dub of Gundam Seed, Bangatsu in Inuyasha, and Carlos in both Transformers Armada and Energon, as well as Ironhide for the last one, playing Ed, Sam Vincent, who voiced the titular character in Crypto the Superdog, Lloyd Garmadon in Ninjago from Season 8 onward, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Tweety in Baby Looney Tunes, aka that show I thought Tiny Toon Adventures was until I saw that show, Jerry Mouse in Tom and Jerry Tales, and Jordan C. Wilde in Uban Star Racers portraying Ed, aka Double D, and Tony Sampson, Tuya Kinomoto or Tori Avalon in Cardcaptor Sakura, Dex Oyama in Mega Man NT Warrior, and Med Gemini Man in the Ruby Spear Mega Man series in the role of Eddy. Other characters such as Johnny 2x4 and Jimmy were played by David Paul Buck Grove, a character actor who showed up in films like The Santa Claus and Elf, and Keenan Christensen respectively, Janice Jode, whose credits include G.I. Joe Extreme, Reboot, Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, and Ranma 1/2 played Sarah, Peter Kalamas, Goku in the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z, and Dr. Adam Brody in Stargate Universe portrayed Wolf, and Kathleen Barr, Dot Matrix in Reboot, and both Trixie Lulamoon and Queen Crystallis in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, was cast as Kevin. Naz, meanwhile, had three different voice actresses, being voiced by Tabitha St. Germain, the titular character in those Scary Godmother TV films, in Season 1, Jen Forgy, Jakotsu in Inuyasha in Season 3, and Aaron Fitzgerald, Cheese Satanaka in Persona 4 the animation and Golden in Seasons 2, 4, 5, and 6, while Fitzgerald herself also voiced May Kanker, minus Season 3 where Jen Forgy took over. Barr and Jode also took on other roles, with the former voicing Marie Kanker and the latter voicing Lee Kanker, while Eddy's often talked about but never seen older brother, only being seen in the movie, was voiced by Terry Klassen, who was the overall voiceover director for the show, and also had worked with the previously mentioned voice artists on other productions. And with that, let's check out the animation. The animation is pretty much everything Danny Antonucci wanted it to be, produced in a similar manner as cartoons produced in the 1940s to the 1970s, and hand-drawn too, just the way he likes it. Because of this, Ed, Edd and Eddy became the last major animated series to utilize cell animation, which was done until Season 5, which used digital ink and paint. The animation cells, meanwhile, were sent to South Korea to make the draft animations before then being sent back to the AKA Cartoon Studio for editing, much like how Jeremy sends all of his popsicle sticks drafts to Norway for the initial creation, and then has them sent back for modifications so that each and every one of them looks like Stick Stickly. Excuse me. As for why he sends them to Norway, I have no idea, but there's a beautiful woman that looks like Famke Janssen that he sends them to, so, I ain't complaining. Nice lady, by the way. Moving on from that, to make the idea of movement real, the show made use of boiling lines, which are essentially shimmering outlines, in order to, according to Antonucci, make it look like a cartoon from the 1930s, which IGN likened to squiggle vision, a method of computer animation where the outlines of shapes are designed to wiggle and undulate, giving the illusion of sketchily hand-drawn animation. And Animation World magazine once wrote that the way the line vibrates and alters itself helps the animation give off a unique feeling as if it were drawn by a child. These boiling lines were produced by tracing off a drawing at least 3 times through sheets of paper, which Antonucci has said that it gives the characters an identity all their own, as well as to shake things up when looking at other Cartoon Network shows, again, paying homage to the classic cartoons of yesteryear. Another distinct thing about the animation was the characters all having multicolored tongues, which Antonucci took from seeing his son and his buddies having different colored tongues due to eating various candies while performing storyboard work, which is also the same reaction to drinking different forms of Gatorade, Powerade, Kool-Aid, and various other beverages that produce this effect. Then again, so does having chlamydia, but that's too gross for words and I don't feel like showing it. Anyway, one last thing to note were the walk cycles, which were processes used to decide how characters should walk or run, turn around, blink, do the tango, bowl, perform a cover of House at Pooh Corner, ride missiles, and various other activities that were actually considered, because those last 4 I just made up, before eventually coming up with the final product, which sadly did not involve Kenny Loggins' best song, and I don't care what any of you say, because House of Pooh Corner is beautiful, and anyone who says otherwise can suck. Also, I'm Alright is his best theme for a movie, so oh, and speaking of music, that brings us to our next segment. To best sum up the music for the show, Danny Antonucci felt it was best if he pitched the theme song for the show first when he was trying to sell it to the studios as opposed to the other option. Show a bunch of colorful pictures. With the theme taking inspiration from the song Big Noise from Winnetka by Bob Crosby and the Bobcats, of which it borrows the bass line and whistling melody. The whistling melody for the theme was performed by Antonucci, as he loved to whistle when he was a kid. The title sequence was conceived by the late Paul Boyd, who was tragically killed by a police officer who came to investigate a disturbance in what many called an unnecessary use of force. And the main music was composed by Patrick Caird, whose work includes the 1995 revival of The Outer Limits and the TV version of The Dead Zone. And most of the music took influence from 1930s and 40s jazz and jump blues, rockabilly, boogie woogie, and 1950s rock and roll music, as opposed to the other option. The synthesized scores of Tangerine Dream and John Carpenter, 80s hair metal, 90s grunge, the score for Fletch, the scores of John Williams, Alan Silvestri, Jerry Goldsmith, Elmer Bernstein, Bernard Herrmann, Ennio Morricone, and James Horner, 80s new wave, and funk metal. And with that, let's look at the broadcast history for the show, because it's quite interesting. The show has a very interesting broadcast history, as it originally was set for a premiere on November 7th, 1998, but due to some minor production delays, The pilot, The Untouchables and Nagda Ed, ended up premiering on January 4th, 1999, and became the 6th cartoon, which was a name usually given to Cartoon Network original animated shows produced from April 28, 1996 to November 8, 2009, which, as you can tell, aired as part of the weekly programming block Cartoon Fridays. Cartoon Network was also adamant on running marathons for Ed, Edd and Eddy, whether for commercial reasons or for special airings of other shows, with one marathon called Boy Girl running on March 7, 1999, and showed not only Ed, Edd and Eddy, but also the Powerpuff Girls, which at the time were two of the network's newest shows, and lasted around 8 hours. That same year, they featured Ed, Edd and Eddy along with other Cartoon Network shows in the 3rd annual Cartoon Weekend Marathon, which ran from August 20th to August 22nd and lasted for 53 hours, which if I had been around then and sat through all that time, this would be my reaction.
I'm late for school.
But that's not all, because in 2002, the show was also featured in the somewhat similar Cartoon Marathon Weekend, so that 5 times fast, from August 23rd to August 25th, followed by a 6-hour marathon called Ed's Day Off, which sounds like a Ferris Bueller parody, that aired 22 episodes on January 19th, 2004, in celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which, much like Dr. King, those kids had a dream. That dream was to spend their day off watching Ed, Edd and Eddy. And that dream still continues. Anyway, that was far from the end of these marathons. So much so, I think Double D lost quite a bit of weight during those events. As there was also the Best Day Edder, which featured every single episode ever in chronological order from April 27th to April 28th, 2007, all leading up to the then unaired Season 5 finale of Fistful of Ed, which was being touted as the last episode ever, which was a load of horse crap because the following month, another episode called The Eds Are Coming premiered, being part of Cartoon Network Invaded, which was an event which had alien-themed episodes of their shows. The Best Day Edder was a hit for the Cartoon Network, garnering them their best ratings of the year, and when they aired a 7-hour Sunday marathon just before Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show had its premiere, they had double-digit delivery gains among children between the ages of 9 to 14, up by 14%, boys in the 9 to 14 age group, up by 16%, and girls aged 6 to 11, which were up by 17%, compared to the same time frame last year, putting a spotlight on the network's weekend performance. And we're not even at the end of the review yet.
But wait, there's more!
At the July 2007 San Diego Comic-Con, a deleted scene from the Season 4 finale, Take This Ed and Shove It, was showcased at the Ed, Edd and Eddy panel, which is certainly something very different than what we've all seen. And initially, the 4th season was going to be the last, but due to the show's popularity, 2 additional seasons and 4 specials, including a movie, were ordered. And while all of those did happen, Season 6 only aired 1 episode before being scrapped in order for Ed, Edd and Eddy's Big Picture Show to get made, which aired on November 8th, 2009, and functions as a series finale, and a really good one at that. And so with all those marathons and other production crap all out of the way, let's head forth to the final verdict.
1, 2, 3, 4. Stick it all right out the door.
Let's start off with Ed, the kind and strong dunderhead with short hair and who sports a green jacket with white stripes on each sleeve, a red and white striped shirt, and purple blue jeans. He also has yellow skin, a unibrow, no chin, his mind is a perpetual burrito of comics and monster movies, loves buttered toast, gravy, chunky puffs, pudding skin, and of course, chickens. Excuse me. And has the hygiene of a porta potty in Jacksonville, Florida. He's often manipulated by Eddy into participating in his scams, and is usually abused by his younger sister Sarah, often threatening to towel on him because she's I'll say. Nevertheless, Ed keeps a positive attitude throughout, caring about his friends and willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good, even for Sarah. Ed is my spirit, as while he is gullible and often taken advantage of unknowingly, he's the type of guy who watches the day roll by without a care in the world, and much like me, doesn't fit in with any crowd. And Danny Antonucci has said so as well, stating, Ed is me, following in his own path and slightly dysfunctional, a daydreamer who, whilst people are doing one thing, will be busy thinking of another. Ed was voiced by Matt Hill, and he did a bang-up job voicing the character, capturing the essence of Ed, giving him life and delivering each non sequitur with finesse. To demonstrate this point, I will show you a clip from Season 1, and then I will show you one from Season 5, to showcase how, as the series went on, the voice actors got better with each season up until the series ended. Starting now.
Nice space helmet. Take me to your plumber. A hamburger by any other name would be as cheesy.
Hello. An original scene transition. Interesting.
Probably the least Ed-like of the group, Ed, also known as Double D, is the most intelligent, polite, mature, and curious of the Eds. And this is evident as he is usually more accepted than Ed or Eddy, giving advice and functioning as the sole voice of reason in certain cases. He sports a red-orange shirt, purple shorts, red socks, cyan shoes, and a black ski hat with 2 white lines on each side, of which hides many mysteries underneath, with Ed and Eddy only ever knowing of what lies beneath, and Eddy using it as blackmail in certain cases. In school, Double D is head of the class, but is physically weaker than a rat fart, and would really like to never be part of any sporting events, and for PE to be PO, meaning like for it to piss off. And as you can tell, he uses Double D in order to differentiate himself from Ed. He's the most creative of the Eds, and utilizes any junk to construct almost anything, including planes, rocket cars, and roller coasters. And though he despises it, he can play the pedal steel guitar. Double D is also very self-conscious, not just with his hat, but also with a significant gap in his front teeth, and is the only Ed who's an only child, with his parents communicating with him through sticky notes, something Danny Antonucci took note from his parents. Much like Ed, I see a lot of myself in Double D, making him very charming and amusing on screen. Shy, analytical, always wanting certain things my own way, that spells me out pretty well, and Double D reminds me of those quirks, which also comes from Antonucci himself, and has even said that if not for Eddy and Ed, would be very content by himself. In another universe, Double D would probably end up in a show similar to Doug, as both are very awkward around the ladies and don't really know how to approach them. But that wasn't in the cards, and thus Double D's fate was to be the straight man of the Eds. A dirty job that someone has to do. Sam Vincent is superb here as Double D, who captures the character's neurotic nature swimmingly, and makes some rather amusing noises when under a lot of stress, making him the lovable geek who definitely charms his way into your heart, not unlike Doug Funny. I still want to see what's under that hat though.
It seems rather small.
Huh?
And the lack of oxygen is rather disturbing. Eddie, we're being propelled into outer space!
He looks so natural. Oh, Ed. Ed. Wake up, Goldilocks!
The leader of this ragtag group of misfits, Edward Skipper McGee.
What'd you call me?
How about I rub some suntan lotion on your back?
How about you don't?
That is your middle name, right? Skipper.
The last name has been used in at least 2 episodes, or simply Eddy, is what happens when you strip away all of Montana Max's wealth, place the spoiled brat mentality into that of another character we'll get to soon, and make the character less evil, but still enough of a jerk that it feels like he's Monty's less successful cousin, and one that's much easier to stomach. He's got skin that's a mix of purple and pink, with 3 long black hairs on his head, as opposed to having this stupid haircut that the kids have these days. Just go for my hairstyle, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be thankful that you did. And he also sports a yellow and red bowling shirt, blue jeans, and red shoes, as opposed to the alternative. A green jacket, black turtleneck sweater, gray jeans, red and white sneakers, a pair of Wayfarers, and a beret. And his loves are quite simple. His room, as that's where his ego reigns supreme, Jawbreakers, which is usually where his ill-earned cash goes to, Chunky Puffs, some very particular magazines meant for whacking the mythical sausage, and not the stuff Rolf has in his fridge, and money. Lots and lots of money.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Eddy usually is the one coming up with the ideas, with Ed and Double D doing all the work while doing other things. And as you can tell, nearly every one of these scams has backfired and failed exponentially, often to his chagrin. He's also a fan of both Tom Jones and Barry White, cherishes his magazines for the playing of the Wii, king-size bed, and disco ball. And much like Edward Elric and Toshiro Hitsugaya, he really doesn't like it when you call him short, hinting at his not-so-thinly veiled Napoleon complex, often using his brother, of whom he boasts about from time to time, to attempt to gain respect from people. As you can tell, Eddy is everything you think he is. A narcissistic, selfish, negligent, loudmouth, short-fused, wannabe Gordon Gekko with the maturity level of a televangelist. In other words,
He's an asshole.
but even at his worst, Eddy still maintains a form of likability and an endearing quality that makes you want to see what happens next, or in most cases, how this scam is going to backfire this time. Eddy's just a man who wants to be respected by everyone around him, but goes about it in a misguided and fruitless endeavor, which also makes you sympathetic toward him in spite of his many faults. Something that comes full circle in the movie, which I'll cover when it gets that DVD release we all want. Tony Sampson is perfect here as Eddy, making you believe that he is this greedy, attention-hungry weasel who will go to extreme lengths to make a quick buck. Not to mention getting the hot-headed nature of the character like he's about to turn into William Foster from Falling Down. Overall, he's dynamite here. And I hope one day he'll come out of retirement and try his hand at voice acting again. Yet at the same time, I do compliment him for what he did. And dude pumps out some good beats. Seriously.
Good thing I'm a man of the world.
Am I loud enough for you, Double D? How about now? No! How about now?
Did you hear that, Plank?
And now we move from the Eds to the rest of the cast. And here we start with Johnny, aka Johnny 2x4. Essentially the Linus of the series, Johnny sports a white t-shirt, some jeans, and some sandals. He should really invest in some socks because bare feet are gross. Johnny is usually mocked for having a giant head that's as shaved as a snow cone, sometimes referred to as melon head or the bald badger, which gets stuck into branches whenever he climbs a tree, has a tendency to jabber on like I tend to do, and more often than not, often gets on a lot of people's nerves. Trust me, Eddy tries to profit from this. Johnny also is usually seen with his imaginary friend and stand-in for Linus's blanket, Plank, a wooden board with drawn-on eyes and a face of whom he is very protective of. Going berserk if Plank is stolen or harmed in any way, shape, or form. In fact, Johnny doesn't even realize that Plank is a piece of wood, as when the Eds asked for help with an imaginary friend, Johnny claimed to have no idea what they were saying. Much like Ed and Double D, I do see a lot of myself in Johnny, as while I don't have an imaginary friend per se, I do often pretend I'm talking to other people, like say, Metal Jesus Rocks, The Gang Grumps, Dig Tapper, The Ghost of My Dignity or lack thereof. That last one shows up quite often, I should say. I also admire how mild-mannered yet gullible Johnny is, often being forgiving no matter what the occasion is, and how he's pretty much the most friendly toward the Eds when compared to everyone else, which also feels like me in certain ways. I'm pretty tolerant of certain things. Johnny is very likable, and both he and Plank are a duo that could have made for their own show entirely. But alas, it was not meant to be. David Paul Grove is great here as Johnny, whose voice just feels perfect for this kind of character, and is wacky and energetic enough that if you put the line, "Let's go crazy and place rubber nipples on your skull picture," it would probably fit. And it's not just me referencing Ren and Stimpy. Well, if Danny Antonucci is involved with the reboot, I'm in. I mean, the fact that he was the elf that Buddy falls on is enough to make me believe that Johnny would totally be in that scenario, making it even more believable that Grove was made for that role.
Okay, I did it! I took everyone's stuff! Oh, now let me go! I gotta go to the bathroom! Plank says on the count of 3, we all flush! Flush like you've never flushed before!
Rub your head, rub your head, rub your head.
Question: who's weaker than a pool noodle against a Ford Mustang, is more accident prone than Kenny McCormick at the state fair, and is a bigger wussy than even Double D? I'll give you a hint. Another character with the same name could run circles around him and would most likely kick him to the curb 6 ways from Sunday. That's right, ladies and germs. Here we come to Jimmy, the biggest crybaby on the block, and Sarah's best friend / slave. Sporting a cyan long-sleeve shirt, white pants, and brown shoes with black soles, not to mention a retainer, which he got from biting a bowling pin made to look like an ice cream cone that Eddy plotted, and many different casts because, like I said, he receives more injuries than the average athlete, so much so you'd swear he should have died because of this. He longs to be a macho man of sorts, and occasionally is very crafty when pitted against the Eds, but more often than not, Jimmy proves to be a bigger jabroni than the Game Gear port of WWF Raw. Jimmy is pretty much everything Danny Antonucci wrote him as. The type of person who spends more time with the girls than the boys, and wouldn't surprise me if Jimmy suddenly dressed like Elton John or Armand Goldman from the Birdcage, and is usually mocked as a result. Dude also has a very unhealthy relationship with Sarah, and honestly should consider thinking for himself and try being more independent, rather than just relying on her all the time. Nevertheless, there is a charm to Jimmy, and does have moments that are pretty entertaining. Keenan Christensen voiced Jimmy up until the series end, and fits the role of this weak and pathetic crybaby perfectly, while also showcasing the more dastardly elements of the character, making sure that you admire this character at his best, at his worst, and somewhere in the middle. Still though, how is he still alive?
Is that a baby blue gym sock? It's beautiful. We're all gonna die! Johnny, you're gonna get it!
I like redheads. I legit do. I am a man who loves redheads. Redheads can be cute, some can be sexy, some can be waifu material, others can be funny, enthusiastic people who you want to have donuts with and shoot pool with. But Sarah, Ed's younger sister? Screw that. I'm just gonna hang with Konako. At least she has some class. Dressed in a pink tank top, blue jeans, and pink shoes, Sarah's manipulative, spoiled, gets angered all too easily, and is abusive toward Ed, threatening to tattle on him and or threaten people or go into a violent temper tantrum when she doesn't get her way. She also harbors a rather uncomfortable infatuation with Double D, and much like the rest of the Eds, subjects him to similar abuse because guilt by association, whatever. To put it lightly, Sarah is a bitch, a skank, an anal bum cover, a brat, a Karen, a Tommy Tallarico type, an example of worst siblings in cartoons, and a word I won't say here, but it starts with a C, and comes after the F word in the 7 words you can't say on television. She's everything she sets out to be. Unlikable, annoying, mean-spirited, a character nobody can stand, and when someone tells her off, it's all too good. Sarah is the Angelica of the series. Plain and simple. It is entertaining though, and Sarah does eventually start treating Ed better at the end of the movie. Janice Jode is phenomenal here, capturing the loud, spoiled nature of the character perfectly, ensuring that Sarah doesn't leave your mind, and not just because you want to throw her into a volcano. And considering she also voices another toxic woman with red hair, Jode also really shows how well her range is as a voice actress.
Big brother, we are in the middle of a game! Come back when it's over! Johnny, you idiot!
This show needs subtitles.
The resident jock of the cul-de-sac, Kevin sports a red hat which he is rarely seen without, a green long-sleeved shirt, biker shorts, and black shoes, not to mention cynicism, sarcasm, and a demeanor that at times can be crueler than a hurricane. His father works at a jawbreaker factory, and thus has an entire garage chocked to the brim with the harder-than-my-dick candies, and has a love for the customization of his bike, skateboards, and snowboards. And when not riding around on his bike, he hangs with Naz and Rolf in the lane, just like my old pal Tyrell and his pet Rock. He's the one that hates the Eds the most, even to the point of paranoia, but most of his disdain is toward Eddy, as the two will go out of their way to make each other look bad, or attempt to inflict pain onto one another if given the window of opportunity. In fact, Eddy refers to Kevin as Shovel Chin because, well, his design speaks for itself, doesn't it? Not to mention has an irrational fear of Eddy's brother, which Eddy will use as leverage if need be. Kevin also tends to say dork a lot, and will mix together certain other words with dork if it fits the situation, much like how Jim LaHaye from the Trailer Park Boys would find numerous ways to incorporate into his vocabulary. Unlike Sarah, who's a character we all love to hate, Kevin is someone we like because of how comical his hatred for the Eds is. He has a way about him that, while yes, showcases how much of a jerk he can be, but still remains charming in spite of it, not to mention finding various and creative ways to use the word dork, which is also what my grandma tends to do when my grandpa is in the conversation. Kevin is also a man who just wants to be respected, and I do respect him, even if he tries too hard to be cool. You gotta be like me, man. Don't try to be cool, and people will think it anyway. Kathleen Barr excels as Kevin, fitting the role of the jock superbly, and much like Janice Jode, also showcases her range by voicing him and another character who's not Ray's mother but bears the same first name. I guess you could say she passed the bar exam. Am I right?
You probably heard this one before, too, dork. This one's called the guitar solo! Ding-a-ding-dang, my ding-a-long-ding-dong!
Cool! Awesome!
Yeah! Sure!
You need to eat more fiber, head and sock, Ed Boy.
The foreigner from a strange land, which I'm gonna go on a limb and say he's from the country of Bulgaria, and was one of the children they hid from Baron Bombers during his reign as ruler. Rolf has blue hair, a yellow shirt with a red stripe, blue jeans, and red Converse-type shoes. He's an unusual immigrant, but generally is a very happy individual, with customs that are as weird as Al, which is displayed quite frequently, often involving various meats, and an accent that's thick as a brick, not to mention often proclaiming he is the son of a shepherd. He also works on his parents' small farm within their backyard, leads the urban rangers, which include Jimmy, Johnny, and Flank, is an alias, which is the act of describing oneself in the third person, and his faithful farm animals consist of 3 pigs, one of which is named Wilfred, a cow named Beatrice, Victor the goat, 5 sheep, and around 6 chickens, 2 of which are named Bridget and Gertrude. Much like with Johnny, Rolf also tends to be one of the more friendlier inhabitants toward the Eds when he sees them, often referring to them as the Ed Boys, only using brute force when made a fool of or even offended, which in turn showcases a lot of muscle whenever you make him mad, so don't do it. Like I said, Rolf is based after Danny Antonucci's childhood, having grown up in a household whose culture and cuisine was very much out there. And with this, you could only imagine what it was probably like for both of them. Rolf is an entertaining character, largely because he's so out there, and his inability to comprehend the culture of anywhere but his own country leads to some pretty funny moments. From the have discipline to the literal bunch of baloney in his bag, the laughs are plentiful when Rolf is in the house, even if he has no clue what that phrase even means. Rolf was voiced by Peter Kalamas, who nails the performance quite well, complete with an eccentric accent that's not quite Russian, not really German, and sounds a bit Swedish, ensuring the mystery of Rolf's origin, which, again, I'm gonna say he's from Bulgaria, and was one of the children who hid from Baron Bombers until Karakterkis Potts and came in to stop him in order to save his children and get his magical car back. Kalamas is really good here, and makes Rolf the wacky foreigner that he is. Although given that he also voiced Goku, it also makes me wonder what Sean Schemmel sounds like voicing Rolf. Probably like King Kai doing an impression of Boris Badenov if I had to guess.
I love this music. It is so shiny. For in the name of the great shepherd elders, Rolf will grill your strudel until you cry like a teensy-weensy baby. Oh, bravo.
The resident nice girl of the cul-de-sac, Naz van Bardenschmeer, yes, this one has a last name that can be confirmed, has blonde hair and wears a black t-shirt with a white tank top over it, blue-purple jeans, and black shoes with white soles, and is generally the sweet-natured, mostly mature if not a little ditzy, occasionally displaying symptoms of dumb blonde, and fashionable girl who treats everyone around her with plenty of respect. This includes the Eds, meaning she, Johnny, and Rolf are the ones who, unless angered, are the ones who respect the Eds. If provoked though, Naz will inflict pain as a result of any irritation being placed on her, or will partake in the punishing of the Eds for any misdeed, proven or otherwise, that may have been committed. She's often the subject of most of the male characters' affections and harbors numerous eccentricities, including the ability to yodel,
Nice lungs, Naz.
the hilariously abysmal skills at playing a comically large tuba that Robin Williams definitely took a dump in,
What? Yeah? Really? I took a dump in your tuba?
and terrible table etiquette. Naz also appears to be smitten with Kevin, but his bike is more or less his true love, and out of all of the Eds, Double D is the one that appears to be the closest to her, as she's kissed him, took him trick-or-treating, and even danced with him. Because underneath that shy persona, Double D is one of the most likely rolling around in the Double Ds. But even enough about Double D being a chick magnet, Naz is a cool character. Laid back, kind, slightly airheaded, Naz has charm and charisma, and is pretty much the subject of numerous failed attempts by the boys of the cul-de-sac to make her their girl. And you can see why. She embodies a sort of charm that, as of right now, reminds me of Shirley the Loon from Tiny Toon Adventures, just without the psychic abilities or new age paraphernalia. Like I mentioned, Naz was voiced by 3 voice actresses, Tabitha St. Germain, Jen Forgey, and Erin Fitzgerald. And while all 3 do a good job, the latter definitely takes the cake, as she really gets into the character and makes her feel alive. Not to mention, Fitzgerald also shows her range, voicing Naz and an even dumber blonde, who we'll get to shortly right after this before and after segment.
Now, boys, relax. Have fun. It's a party. Razzle dazzle, make 'em cry. Peach Creek cobbler, sock 'em in the eye. Yeah!
Hey, look, it's our husbands!
Just in time to play house.
Gankers! Extreme close up! Wah! Wah! Wah!
Question: do you know someone who has an unhealthy infatuation with you and won't take no for an answer, and you end up in a situation similar to Fatal Attraction, or in this case, the Cable Guy? Then that's the Kanker Sisters for you. Consisting of Lee, the redhead with the white shirt with red spots, blue jeans, and purple shoes, and leader of this coven of witches. Marie, the blue-haired goth type with the black tank top, green pants, and black shoes. And May, the dumb blonde with buck teeth and sporting a gray shirt, red shorts, yellow socks, and red shoes. And sadly, neither is the first anime girl I ever had a crush on, nor is she Peter Barker's moral compass. These girls are in lust for the Eds, and whenever they see them and get them trapped, it's time for some smooching against their will, because some people just don't know when no means no. And when not harassing the Eds into locking lips with them, they in general leave everyone in the cul-de-sac in a state of fear, as their tempers are more volatile than habanero peppers in your mouth. Or Ed with a pebble in his shoe. That's just as bad. Trust me, when in a bad mood, they leave nothing but a path of destruction in their wake. If there was ever a true antagonist in Ed, Edd and Eddy, the Kanker Sisters would definitely be it. As more often than not, they torment the Eds and pretty much all of the cul-de-sac whenever they feel like it. And if not that, then they're fighting with themselves because that's just how they function. It's nevertheless entertaining though, and it's interesting to see just how these 3 get woven in somehow, resulting in some pretty funny slapstick and other shenanigans. As I have mentioned, the other voice actresses do double duty here, with Janice Jode voicing Lee, Kathleen Barr voicing Marie, and for every season minus season 3 where Gen 4G handled the voice, same with Naz, Erin Fitzgerald voices May, and they all do a terrific job capturing the essence of these characters, especially Erin Fitzgerald as May, as she definitely sounds like the idiot sister here. They also remind me a lot of the huge crew from Ned C. Classified School Survival Guide, the trio of ladies who love the titular Ned Bigby to death, and are essentially that, but with affections toward all 3 characters instead of just one, as well as a Myra Duff if we wish to include occurrence. And so with that, let's show the final Season 1 to Season 5 comparison, and move to my overall thoughts on the show.
I'm May Kanker.
I'm Marie Kanker.
And I'm Lee Kanker. We're the Kanker sisters.
Watch out, loser, snoozer!
Aw, nobody hit the bald kid.
Shut up!
Ed, Edd n Eddy is one of my favorite shows of all time, and a show I hold very near and dear to my heart, like I just built a fortress around it, Sting style. It's number 3 of my favorite shows, just behind Digimon and SpongeBob SquarePants, and along with SpongeBob, Animaniacs, and various Hanna-Barbera cartoons, they helped influence my sense of humor in many different ways. Not to mention, help mold me into the man that I am today. Ed, Edd n Eddy helped me get through my middle school years, and helped me build several friendships that I hold near and dear even now, and some that I'm still friends with as of 2024. It's a show that, before Max, formerly HBO Max, was created, I watched a lot of on Netflix, and whenever reruns appeared on TV, I would tune in, whether on Cartoon Network itself or on Boomerang. And between Ed, Edd n Eddy, Pokemon, Digimon, Animaniacs, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z, Regular Show, Young Justice, Batman the Animated Series, and Batman Beyond, it helped make the time frame of 2012 and 2013 the most beautiful moments of my life. And that's not even counting some of the stuff that would happen later, like the first time I ever heard the Beatles, seeing Mel Jesus Rocks and Drunken Master Paul create Dorito-crusted chicken nuggets, my first trip to Universal Studios Hollywood, and many other great moments that live in my mind like it's nobody's business. Point being, at one point, life was beautiful. Now it's just hit or miss, as is usually the case. But enough about that. What is it that makes this show shine? Because if you love it this much, why is that? The answers are quite simple. But first thing is the writing for the show, because nearly every episode is a cavalcade of hilarity, with plenty of slapstick comedy coming out, usually a lot of people getting hurt constantly, not unlike the Three Stooges, and comical destruction that throws reality out the window, because realism is boring, as we are well aware. Not only that, but the dialogue is also part of how good the writing is, with each line of dialogue being filled with some superb zingers that, when you factor in how well the voice cast sells their roles, are certified guaranteed to crack you up like Jon Stewart ranting about Chicago-style pizza. It's amazing. It also helps that in certain cases, the characters acknowledge they're in a cartoon, such as Kevin mentioning how the show needs subtitles, or how Double D mentions to Eddy that they could go to their houses and watch Ed's movie marathon, to which Eddy responds by the fact that it would ruin the plot, which is pure golden. I love it. Some of these lines are so good, they could make for their own video. And there are compilations of classic Ed, Edd n Eddy quotes out there, and there was one I really liked back in the day that had plenty of winners. But sadly, that video no longer exists because of copyright issues. Next up, the animation is awesome, and it only gets better with each season. Like I have mentioned, the show was the last animated series to use cell animation, as everyone was moving to digital ink and paint. and even when the series moved to digital inking methods for season 5 onward, it still looks really good throughout. The backgrounds are colorful and vibrant, with each setting having its own identity and flavor. The character designs are brilliant, especially when you factor in the boiling line methods that Danny Antonucci and his crew at AKA Cartoon used throughout the show's run. And the character movements are as smooth as butter, which makes the show feel like there is life in it. Something that more animated media should take note of so that the characters don't feel stiff, and so it doesn't look cheaper than a bootleg iPhone that's really just an MP3 player with technology dating back to 2003. The animation style also helps it to stand out from its contemporaries, which are a lot cleaner and normal. Whereas here, it feels unique because of how the characters are shaped and colored, especially when you factor in the multicolored tongues for each character. Another great thing about the show is the sound design, as it doesn't have the archetypal sound effects you hear in old Tom and Jerry or Looney Tunes cartoons, not even those you would have heard in cartoons at the time. Instead, he uses a different set of sound effects that, like with the animation, feel unique with their own flavor and taste, and are perfectly aligned with any situation in the show. Whether it's just a facial expression or just someone getting hit, each sound effect is perfect in both timing and how it stands out from other cartoons. It also brings me back to watching the videos of the late Kitty0706, who would often use sound effects from Eddy and Eddy in many of his videos, such as Team Fabulous 2, Mass Defect, and of course, his classic shows Moments with Heavy and Elliot Goes to School, and also helped make those videos symbols of the long-since forgotten art of Gmod machinimas, of which Kitty0706 was a pioneer of, along with Das Boshit and his Idiot Box series. And lastly, the music by Patrick Caird is top-notch, as the music fits every scenario, much like with the sound effects. With its mix of jazz and blues, and a bit of rockabilly in there for good mix, it feels dynamic and fluid, and enhances the situation perfectly, making every moment count, and ensuring that every laugh you give is accompanied by the appropriate song with every occasion. It's a great soundtrack, and helps to give it a distinct feeling when compared to something that, in any other cases, would probably use sounds like an orchestra playing as if it were Animaniacs or something. If there were any complaints I had with the show, I'd say that it can maybe get a little too mean-spirited for some to handle, especially in certain cases like in If It Smells Like an Ed, where Jimmy essentially frames the Eds for embarrassing him and results in the cankers having their way with the Eds and the kids throwing fruits at them while attached to a fence, which I can see some people not liking that episode all that much. But it's usually undercut by moments that are legitimately funny and don't ever bog the show down. Because when something's funny, you die laughing and come back reborn, now a happier, more pleasant soul to be around, and one that has a new lease on life, feeling better than a corn dog at State Fair. I better not stay on that too long, or I'm gonna get hungry because corn dogs are delicious and whoever created them should be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts. Overall, Eddy and Eddy is the greatest show of all time, and something that makes me smile every time. Here it comes, folks! This is the part where I describe my favorite episodes of the series, and there's so many to choose from. So many classics, so many bangers, and so very little time here that's hard to pick. I probably would have to make an entire video dedicated to the subject, probably a top 11 in honor of Nostalgia Critic. But I definitely can tell what my favorite episode is. The Day the Ed Stood Still. The set for the episode is quite simple. Ed wants to be a monster, and Double D and Eddy dress him up as such. with Eddy having prospects of making cash on Ed. Things go awry though, as Ed soon begins to believe he is such a monster, and soon begins abducting each inhabitant of the cul-de-sac one by one in rapid succession, leading to Double D and Eddy chasing after him, with Eddy finding it hilarious and Double D being determined to stop Ed's chaos. This one is hilarious for a multitude of reasons. One is how the way Ed imprisons his victims, which feels a lot like the Alien films and how those who have been impregnated with the xenomorph embryos are suspended in place. Only there's no chest bursters, just some chewed up chunky puffs, which Ed uses to have his unlucky inhabitants stick to the wall. The other is Eddy's darkly comical enjoyment of the situation, viewing it as more of a joke rather than something serious, and the way he tries to profit from it is just as funny, because even in a moment of terror, Eddy will still try to make as much money as he can out of the scenario. Not only that, but the way that Ed gets into character is both incredibly funny and also very terrifying when you think about it. When Ed imagines himself as a monster, he acts like something ripped straight out of a science fiction horror film, capturing anybody he sees and placing them on his wall with chunky puff cocoons, which also makes you wonder, if Ed's imagination led him to believe he was a monster, what would happen if he imagined himself as, let's say, Dracula, Pazuzu, or some other terrifying figure I can't think of? Needless to say, Ed would make for a really good method actor and will most likely win an Oscar for his performance in any movie he finds himself in, while Eddy stares off in jealousy as Double D and everyone else claps over his win. Overall, it's a phenomenal episode, and certainly my number one favorite right here. Hang in there, folks, we're almost done. We just have the reception and legacy of the show, and it'll all be over. So try to stay awake a little while longer.
All right, now everybody, get in crash position.
Anyway, Ed, Edd n Eddy was a big success, as when it aired, it attracted an audience of 31 households, was broadcast in 120 countries, and was very popular amongst both kids and adults, with Cartoon Network executive Linda Simensky claiming that it did even better than expected in the ratings department following the premiere, and even became one of the best rated shows for the network. It became Cartoon Network's most popular show among boys aged 2 to 11, and in 2005 it was reported that the show was the #1 rated show on the network, and was well known among children aged 6 to 11, and ensured that the series would continue, airing from January 4th, 1999 to November 8th, 2009, and became the longest running Cartoon Network original series and the longest running series to be produced in Canada at the time. The show also got plenty of critical acclaim as well, with David Cornelius of DVD Talk equating the Eds to that of the Three Stooges, and praised how unique the animation was. The show was so well regarded, according to Aaron Fitzgerald, that Tom Kenny's son was a fan of the show. Yeah, you heard me right. SpongeBob SquarePants himself said that his own son was a fan of Ed, Edd n Eddy. Don't believe me? Here's proof of this.
I met Tom Kenny, the guy who does the voice for SpongeBob SquarePants, and I'm a big fan of his show, so I was like, trying to get up to him just, hey Tom, I really like your show, it's really cool. He's like, and somehow I got across that I did Ed, Edd n Eddy, and I said, I'm sorry to take up your time, and I walked away. He came chasing after me, he's like, wait, my son is a huge fan of your show. I have to get your autograph, he'll kill me. So I was like, SpongeBob? That's ridiculous. So I wrote an autograph for him, and you wrote an autograph for me.
Ed, Edd n Eddy also got some award buzz, but while it sadly got snubbed by the Emmys, it did win a Reuben Award for Best Television Animation. Danny Antonucci won a Leo Award for Best Director in an Animated Series. Patrick Caird won a Leo for Best Musical Score of an Animated Program or Series, and a SOCAN, an International Television Series Music Award, as well as receiving nominations for a Leo on episodes like Ed and a Half Shell, Postcards from the Ed, Ed and Eddy's Boo Ha Ha, and This Won't Hurt an Ed, And James Wooton was nominated an Annie for Outstanding Individual Achievement for storyboarding in an animated television production for the episode Wish You Were Ed.
I'm not through yet.
Complex listed Eddy's room on their list of movie and TV characters' bedrooms you wish were yours, and ranked Jimmy at 14 on their list of 15 artistic characters we miss from our childhood. Crack.com gave praise to the show's violence, even said that it had set a very high bar that no other Cartoon Network show has surpassed. And Bob Higgins, an executive at WildBrain, even called Ed, Edd and Eddy a landmark in animation. In August of 2002, the New York Paley Center for Media, formerly the Museum of Television and Radio, featured the episode And Ed is Born as part of the program Cartoon Power, celebrating Cartoon Network's 10th birthday. Which is amazing to think that Cartoon Network is now 32 and Ed, Edd and Eddy is now 25. My, how time flies. The Eds have also made appearances in other shows, such as Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, where in the episode Eddie Monster, where the boys appeared with that series' animation style, along with a small cameo in The Grim Adventures of K&D, which was a crossover between Codename Kids Next Door and The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Double D appeared in Mad during the sketch Once Upon a Toon, which was made for Cartoon Network's 20th anniversary in 2012, and in 2018, Plank showed up in Robot Chicken during the episode 321 333 222 366, in which he appeared in a segment called Plank, The College Years. The show was even featured in Cartoon Network's fictitious awards program, the first 13th annual Fancy Anvil Awards Show program special, live in stereo in 2002. With Plank winning Best Performance by an Inanimate Object in a Dramatic Role, and Ed, Double D, and Eddy won Best Performance by a Team in a Cartoon Series, while Sarah got nominated for Best Performance by a Female in a Cartoon Series, losing to Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls because Bubbles is better than Sarah, and knows for a fact that Blossom is the better redhead than Sarah. In 2004, the Eds showed up in some basketball commercials with NBA All-Star Steve Francis. Ed appeared in the Cartoon Network Elections 2004 with Grimm from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and they ended up winning because of the highest amount of votes by viewers. And the fourth single on American rapper Jid's debut album, The Never Story, is titled Ed, Edd and Eddy. And the whole song is essentially him and two friends performing scams similar to the characters, with there even being a music video for the song in the style of the show's animation. It was going to appear on Adult Swim, but legal issues kept it from happening. The Eds appeared in DC Comics' Cartoon Network Block Party alongside other characters from Cartoon Network shows. There were 2 books based on the show. They appeared in shorts that the network produced, had video games which include Ed, Edd and Eddy Jawbreakers for the Game Boy Advance, Ed, Edd and Eddy Giant Jawbreakers for old school mobile phones, Ed, Edd and Eddy The Misadventures for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, OG Xbox, and Game Boy Advance, and as well as PC, and Ed, Edd and Eddy The Scam of the Century for the Nintendo DS. And characters and locations from the show appeared in other Cartoon Network games such as Cartoon Network Block Party and Cartoon Network Speedway, while the Eds appeared as non-playable nanos in the now-defunct MMORPG Fusion Fall. And I can safely say that I have played the Misadventures on the GameCube, which will make for a really good video game review idea should I decide to do that someday. So yeah, the show was a gigantic hit, and had a lot of stuff going for it up until the very end. Ed, Edd and Eddy was truly something special, and there's an excellent fan video that this channel called Loon Lagoon Productions made back in 2017, which I'll have a link to in the description to check out because it's really good and I highly recommend it. So yeah, not much else to say here. So let's end this thing. It should be noted that during the production of this video, the light bulb in my lamp had burnt out and I had to replace it with a fresh one. So the lighting is probably going to be very different than it was during the intro for this video. So yeah, there's that. Not that you can really tell the difference because this isn't great lighting to begin with, and this isn't even great camera quality. But there's that out of the way. Anyway, Eddy and Eddy is a show that I loved watching growing up, and I still love watching even now. And it still holds up after 25 years of being on the air and being off the air and just being a thing. And I highly recommend that you check it out. Especially on this complete series DVD set that I am glad that this thing finally exists. Like, I've been waiting for this for years and finally got it. It may not have the specials or the movie on here, but it's got most of, if not every episode, including from the planned but ultimately scrapped season 6, as well as the Cartoon Network Invaded special. So it's got everything on here, including some of the extras from seasons 1 and 2, even if it doesn't include any of the other promos from like the Cartoon Network City era, or any of the other like extras. Like there's some extras on a bonus disc for the Misadventures video game that was released. I believe it's the original Xbox version that comes with that bonus disc. It comes with a lot of behind-the-scenes featurettes, mostly talking about the making of the game, but also about the series as a whole. It doesn't have those, but it does have most of, if not every episode on here, minus the specials in the movie. And in my opinion, this thing is worth picking up. And I'm glad to finally have in my collection. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Eddy and Eddy. The voice cast is great. The characters are cool and they're awesome and funny. The animation is really great. The writing is pretty good. And overall, it's just a great show that, after 25 years of being on the air, is still pretty good. And it's kind of sad that Danny Antonucci and aka Cartoon really haven't done anything 15 years after the series originally concluded, because I could have seen them doing some pretty amazing stuff even after Eddy and Eddy pretty much ended. Maybe some more stuff for Cartoon Network, maybe try again with Nickelodeon, maybe some stuff with Disney, maybe some stuff for whatever streaming platform you got, but it all depends on if the streaming service is still gonna be here and isn't gonna take it off after a bunch of things. But that's a whole other kettle of fish, and I'll get into that some other time. But yeah, so with that, this concludes my review for Eddy and Eddy, and I hope you enjoyed it, found it entertaining and educational, and it made you want to seek out the show because, well, 25 years ago, this is on the air, SpongeBob is on the air, Star Wars fans are going to see Episode 1, The Matrix was coming out, you had Toy Story 2. Point being, ladies and gentlemen, 1999 was a pretty awesome year. Especially when you factor in that the Sega Dreamcast actually launched that year. Tony Hawk Pro Skater gave its first game, and Resident Evil 3 was out on the PlayStation 1. Yeah. But before I start gushing about how great 1999 was, because, well, 1999 was a pretty solid year, I think I better conclude this video because it's already at the hour mark, and I don't want anyone pulling out the wrap it up box on me. So, yeah. So, this is the end of the video, and with that, I will catch you later. I'll see you next time.
An iris in would be appropriate, don't you think? Thank you.